It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole, talking to today Kim McLamb. She's wildlife rescuer extraordinaire. I like highlighting the unsung heroes of our communities, and she is exactly that. She's a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Maryland licensed wildlife rehabilitator. Her area of coverage is the eastern shore of Maryland and Anne Arundel County. Kim, thank you for joining me today.
This is such an honor.
So I'm going to go through a week in your life, or maybe a little over a week, from what I've seen on your Facebook. April 19th, rock pigeon rescued in Glen Burnie. April 18th in Annapolis, a juvenile red fox fell into a deep window well. You got it out. After you left that call, you attended to an orphaned squirrel over by Trader Joe's in Annapolis. On April 17th, Annapolis bunny, the sole survivor of a dog attack on its nest. April 15th, baby field mice inside of a chunk of a house siding near the runway of Kentmore Air Park. April 13th, baby possums, survivors of a dog attack in Centerville. And on April 8th, turtle struck on Route 18 and near Piney Creek Road. That's over on Kent Island. Does that sound about right for a week in your life?
Yeah, it does. And then what's not on those little journal entries is the phone calls. So not only am I covering my normal 10 counties, the entire eastern shore of Maryland and Anne Arundel, now I'm also getting referrals from Howard County. I got a bunny in as far as PG County that was attacked by a dog. Yesterday I got a call from Clear Spring, Maryland, because some of the larger centers are closing for deep cleans, and so they're not doing intakes. Clear Spring was a raccoon nest that had gotten blown out of a cavity of a tree. The tree fractured, and so kids were in great shape, so we just rebuilt a little nest in a cardboard box, and hopefully Mom's going to come back.
This is volunteer work. You do not get paid for doing this work, right?
As long as we have current permits, DNR encourages us to mention we can take donations. We're allowed to accept donations, but this is an unpaid little hobby with lots of rules.
Your donations, and there are other unsung heroes in our communities rescuing wildlife, but I'm focusing on you this week. You are posting all of this on Facebook. Tell me about that.
It's a Facebook fundraiser, and then I had already been in many community groups just scraping for rescue requests for wildlife. So I was already in those community groups, and then when I put my fundraiser up there, I would share to those groups, and most of them, they have a little vetting process. Most of them will let me in so that I can share what I'm doing, and sometimes it's a PSA about how do you re-nest with squirrels, how do you re-nest with birds, what do you do when a turtle is crossing the road, that kind of thing.
And this Facebook fundraiser, it's called Anne Arundel and Eastern Shore Wildlife Rehab 2020, and the end is the ampersand, so Anne Arundel, ampersand, Eastern Shore Wildlife Rehab 2020. Kim, when do you sleep? Because it seems like you are out and about on these wildlife rescues. And by the way, you have kids too, right?
I have kids, but some of them have moved out already. My youngest is 17. They are much more organized than I am. I'm the loose cannon in the house. They're like, "Mom, sit down. We made you some dinner." So I'm so thankful to have them. They know when baby season hits that it's going to be crazy. And my youngest daughter is one of the top neonate kitten fosters for our county, for Queen Anne's County. The toughest cases, the ones that are frozen little ice cubes with no mom, with the placenta still attached, wrapped around them, they come to my daughter. And she is only 17, but she is absolutely fantastic.
Like mother, like daughter, it sounds like, yeah?
Yep.
So what got you into this? How did you start this?
When I was in the 8th grade, I did an internship at Montgomery County Animal Control. And there was, I have dug around and tried to find out this lady's name. There was a lady who would do wildlife. And literally, imagine this, we would be working the front desk and getting the calls and everything. And the crates of raccoons and skunks and whatever would just be brought in right behind us while they sorted it out. And there was this one lady who had these little like recipe cards, and she did all this wildlife stuff, and that's when it just sort of hooked in my brain. I was like, hey, that'd be cool to do that one day. Fast forward many, many years, I decided to finally sit down, get all the permits, suck it up, drive to Second Chance in Gaithersburg, do my apprenticeship, and get my licenses and do this, jump in.
And our communities are better for this since you have, and I thank you for that as an animal lover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I'm talking today to wildlife rescuer extraordinaire Kim McLamb. She's headquartered on the eastern shore of Maryland, and her area of coverage, well, right now in the midst of this pandemic, she'll go pretty far to help our wildlife here in Maryland get rescued. Now, once you rescue the wildlife, you're dealing with a variety of different rehabbers that you're taking them to all over the state, yes, and sometimes out of state.
I haven't crossed over into Delaware yet because of the pandemic. I've been relying on their transport network.
By them, you're talking about Tri-State Bird Rescue over in Newark, yes?
Tri-State, yeah, in Newark, yeah. They're the gold standard. They've been there 44 years. If I know it's like a raptor or a larger bird with a severe injury, that's where they need to go immediately, or owl moon. And so as soon as I have something that is way beyond me, I'll be on the phone, texting, whatever. Sometimes I'm texting Suzanne Shoemaker, who is absolutely legendary. I'm a newbie at this, so I reach out immediately. She has another fantastic transport network, and sometimes she's just like, hey, like very recently out in Osprey, and she's like, hey, I've got someone waiting in Annapolis for a turkey vulture, and catch that bus. And so that's what I did. The Osprey was packed up, and I met the other transport.
This is Suzanne Shoemaker, is the executive director, the founder of Owl Moon Raptor Center, and that's in Boyd's, Maryland. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
All of these organizations are nonprofits, so you're dealing with a nonprofit person, Kim McLamb, rescuing these birds, raccoons, foxes, you name it, and then taking them to a rehab facility where they can go to be helped.
Yeah, with the rabies vector, I don't have that permit personally, so I have to know that a permitted rehabber has a space for that animal. I am willing to go out, like if there's a citizen in imminent danger with a rabies vector, I will go out to the site and put myself into the middle, just protecting the citizen, waiting for maybe it's DNR, maybe it's exhibiting symptoms of rabies. So I'm waiting there, and so somebody else doesn't come across it until DNR gets there. Or if it's something like the fox in the window well, if it's something that the citizen is not equipped or not comfortable dealing with, we had tried a board to try to get it to come out. It was just too deep. Mm-hmm. Just to pop over there and be a very gentle intervention, very quick, with the proper gear. So I'm not going to get bit. He's not going to get bit, and the animal doesn't have to be tested for rabies. So I interface a little bit with rabies vector.
And have you been injured? How long have you been doing this?
I've had my master's license for the mammals for not quite 2 years. June will be 2.
And any injuries during that time?
I got a little, like a very, very slight puncture from a red-tailed hawk when it was in a marsh area next to a road construction site, and the gentlemen were trying to be helpful, and they pulled the sheet off of the bird at the wrong time, and he got me just a little bit. So I poured rubbing alcohol in the hole and kept on going.
Oh, yeah. And why do you do this, Kim?
Why do I do it? My hubby and I, were going to retire and do this because he knew I wasn't going to slow down in retirement, and he knew how much I love to do it. There was always something showing up at my door, even when we had little kids. So we were going to do it. and the Lord took him home. He was a volunteer firefighter, 20-year-plus life member in Kensington. The Lord took him home. The Lord had better plans. And so as I was caring for him, he's like, I know what you're going to do. You're going to continue on this path. You're going to do the wildlife rehab that we were going to do. Promise me you're going to do that. So that's why I do it. And I've got the power of two because of that.
I'm so sorry for the loss of your husband, but you are clearly a rock star for doing what you do. Again, the name of the Facebook fundraiser, Anne Arundel and Eastern Shore Wildlife Rehab 2020. We're going to take another quick break on the 1430 Connection. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I'm talking today to Kim McLamb. She's a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Maryland licensed wildlife rehabilitator. That does not mean she works for the state or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. She does this wildlife rescuing on her own time as a volunteer. Kim, when was the last time you had a day without a wildlife rescue?
Actually, yesterday was just all phone calls, I believe. I didn't have an intake yesterday. So we had the raccoon issue out in Clear Spring, so that was just a remote assistance. You just never know what you're going to wake up to. I try to wake up before the sun and just get all of my animals in care fed, throw some jeans on, whip the hair up into a bun, and be ready to go, because you never know. People are waking up and they'll see something around them, so I want to be ready.
When Kim doesn't get a call, that doesn't necessarily mean there's not wildlife being rescued. There are others, these unsung heroes in our communities, that are responding to these calls for a bunny nest being disturbed, juvenile owl falling out of its nest in a tree, for what have you. And by the way, those re-nesting, which I'm sure you've taken a part of, when a baby owl or a baby bird of prey of some sort has fallen out of a nest, you all do what?
Well, you can take a wicker laundry basket or just a regular laundry basket, and you lash it to the tree, and you put the nesting materials back up, and you get a 20-foot ladder and carry baby up there, and then you step back and you want to monitor and make sure that the parents return.
All of this should be done with first calling a rehabilitation expert, especially if you're not sure of yourself how this works or cannot climb a ladder. Calling a rehab should be first impulse, or calling the Natural Resources Police or Department of Natural Resources when any wildlife is found injured. On the eastern shore of Maryland, as many of us know, there have been multiple cases of carbofuran poisoning of bald eagles and other birds of prey. Kim, we discussed this briefly a few months ago. You hadn't been aware that this was the result of carbofuran, which is an extremely toxic pesticide. It's banned in the U.S. It's banned in Maryland. It's not supposed to be used. You've changed your protocol, the way you respond to bald eagles down on the eastern shore, although you've not responded for any of the carbofuran cases.
Right. When I learned that there was an issue with this pesticide and how toxic, I did a little tiny bit of digging around to see how toxic this was, because I might be coming into contact with it, and then knowing that sometimes it is associated with the hunting for hire places, for a better term. We've got several on the eastern shore. So what I did was I went and dug around and scraped some addresses, and my favorites in my maps is not really my favorites, it's where these places are, so that if I have an eagle that is showing signs of poisoning, I can immediately try to get the authorities involved and know more about what I'm dealing with, so I can treat it like hazmat.
Yeah, and for those that aren't aware, all of these cases in the past, according to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Special Agent retired Frank Consier, were the result of these regulated shooting areas on the eastern shore and protecting the captive raised birds they release ultimately to be shot by hunters. So people protecting their captive raised mallards, ducks that are going to be shot by hunters that the eagles were taking. and other wildlife that we're taking these captive raised mallards. So these baits have been left out for that ultimately get to that apex predator, the bald eagles, and have caused multiple deaths of bald eagles on the eastern shore because of these poison baits left out. But again, this should go through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Natural Resources Police have responded to some of these incidents. You got a call about one of these incidents and was ready to respond, but quickly someone called you back and said, no, don't do it, yes?
That's correct. Yeah, they found out that it was multiple birds and recognized what was going on. So they said, never mind, DNR is going up right now and dealing with it, so you're off the hook. And that's all I heard from it. I wasn't kept in the loop.
That when these things happen, it becomes a crime scene, and there's integrity that needs to be kept with a crime scene with any evidence. And again, that should only be law enforcement officers responding to the scenes, not volunteer rescuers like Kim. Kim, what do you want people to know about, it is baby season right now, baby birds, baby rabbits, baby you name it, possums, you've had some possums. What should people look out for? What do people need to know, and where can they call to get help?
We've got very, very wet yards, and we're trying to get our mowing done over here on the eastern shore, I'm sure other places. If you see a patch of dead grass or if you see fur floating around, just walk your yard before you mow it that first time, because your baby rabbit nests are already there. So you walk around, you see if there's it's a very shallow little scrape out that they use. It's really small. But just look around and see if you see anything different in your yard, and you might avoid giving them a little scalping or a haircut with your lawnmower blades. For the baby birds, when they get blown out of a nest, if you have a margarine tub or a yogurt tub and you punch a couple holes side to side and zip a ribbon through there, you can make a replacement nest as long as those babies aren't injured, pop them right back up there. Then you're giving the parents the ability to raise those youngsters the way they can do the very best. Anything any rehabber does is fake and a substitute. We do our best, but if we can reunite, that is the goal. When you've got something like squirrels and the nest is destroyed, you can build. I've got a little thing of plans that I send out all the time for building a very, very simple squirrel box out of one board. You give her back her real estate and she raises the young. And if it's something like a raccoon and you want them to leave and take the babes with them, you can set up a radio on a talk radio station like WNAV. And they'll think that people are there, and they will move the babies on their own.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's a couple tips.
Yep, so absolutely. Tune into WNAV for those wildlife rescues.
Right.
Kim, again, where can people reach you other than, we know that your Facebook page is there for donations, or Facebook fundraiser is there for donations. But if they have a wildlife rescue that they need you, where can they reach you?
A text to 443-786-8992 is the best. Cell service is not the best over here on the Eastern Shore, so sometimes I am holding my phone and I literally get a voicemail and not a call, but the text comes through. I also watch my Facebook Messenger all the time, so if you go to Kim MC on Facebook, you don't even have to be my friend. All you can do is pop on there and send me a message, and I'll be watching for it. And you'll know it's me because there's a firefighter's helmet on my profile picture.
And one more time on that Facebook fundraiser is Anne Arundel and Eastern Shore Wildlife Rehab 2020. Kim, I can't thank you enough for what you do for our communities and for our wildlife.
Thank you so much for this interview. I'm so honored to speak with you, and it's been such a joy to get to know you. And when this pandemic is over, I got a big hug for you, girl.
Aw, back at you, Kim. This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.